My name's Ingrid. I'm an alcoholic. I've experienced with these steps as they're laid out in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with the help of two-step study sponsors, Loving God meetings like this. I'm in the process of making my amends, and I live the latter steps and all the steps to the best of my willingness on a daily basis. Thank you for asking me to speak today. I don't want to be here, so that's why I know I need to be here. Public speaking is just one of those things. I thought it would get easier, but it hasn't. So it is what it is. I'll briefly qualify in how I got into Big Book Step Study, then I'll talk about my experience with the first part of Step 1. From the very beginning, I had alcoholic thinking long before I started drinking. Growing up, I always felt like I didn't know the answers to the questions of life I didn't even know the questions, whereas everybody else had the answers. I never felt good enough, I never felt smart enough, I never felt rich enough, I never felt fast enough, pretty enough, all of that stuff. I just felt like there was this lacking. And my solution to all of it was to fill this emptiness, this God-shaped hole with stuff. Just stuff it down and don't feel it and just act as if. And, that doesn't work, obviously, but, my whole childhood could be shaped up on that searching feeling. With this one story, and I loved basketball so much, and it was a God-given gift. I was really good at it. And I played in elementary school, middle school, and I got to high school, and it was a regional high school, so we had another town join us. And all of a sudden, the focus stopped being on basketball for me, and it was on the social aspect, because these girls, all of a sudden, I don't know how it happened, but they were all popular, and I wasn't. I was the odd man out, and I wanted to be popular. Instead of just focusing on basketball, I focused on how these girls would go to parties in the woods during the weekends, and how they would kiss boys, and I wanted that so badly, and I didn't know how to get it. And I thought that you could get it by just getting stuff. If I got enough stuff, or I made it look like I had enough stuff, this missing part of me would feel quenched, and I would be whole, and I would be okay. So I plotted and I schemed on how to get them to like me, or how to look cool enough. And that's a waste of effort. But it was a Friday night, and I was doing what I normally did on Friday nights. I was with my dad, and we were at Lechmere Sales, and I was walking around the store, probably hopelessly looking to find something that was going to make me feel enough. And I still do that sometimes in Target, but I had the right organizing stuff so I was in Lechmere Sales, and I came to the shoe department, and I saw them. I saw these black Nike high-top sneakers that all of my teammates had, and I thought, if I could just get those, that would answer my question. I would be full, I would be complete, and they would like me, and I would be popular, and we would all hang out in the woods drinking and meeting boys. I had it all figured out, right? These one shoes were going to do it for me. And I really believed it, So I found my dad in the store, and I brought the box over, and he looked at me like I was crazy. He was like, we just went to the New Balance factory store in Brighton. We got you these shoes. And you say they were comfortable, and they worked. So I did what I did. I lied, and I manipulated the situation, and I said that those shoes were not comfortable, and they were hindering my ability to play basketball. And my dad bought it because my dad, he's a great guy, but bought me stuff to make me feel okay. And so I got the sneakers, and going home, I was just smiling because I knew I found it. I found the answer to all of my problems. And then Monday came around, and I had a basketball game, and I put the shoes on, and I was just going to impress them, and they were going to like me. And I got onto the court. They didn't treat me any differently at all. I was the same old Ingrid. I still had the same insecurities. I still had this empty hole, and I was still searching for stuff. And I was devastated. And after the game, I got home. And my dad came into my room, and he said, Ingrid, why didn't you just tell me you wanted to be like your friends? I would have gotten that. That's okay. And I lied. And I said, I didn't even know that they had those sneakers, So the joke is they weren't comfortable. They were miserable. And they stayed in the back of my closet until I donated them to Goodwill 10 years later. I held on to them because I thought that they were, they thought they were the answer. And they didn't get me what I thought I wanted. But I repeated that story in 100 different ways all through my drinking career, and even after when I got sober, because I always thought that this outside stuff. I would cut off my toes to fit into your shoes, just if that would give me that glimmer of hope that you would like me. And that's how it continued. And from that point on, I went to college and I got into a really good school, and I wasted that opportunity because I started drinking. It was the first time I started drinking in college, and from the time that I drank to the time I got sober, it was, I had jackpots and I had those signposts. I got a DUI, I did all that stuff, but it was really almost status quo. It was like I just wasn't fully living. I wasn't ever thriving. I was kind of just surviving. I was living in my parents' basement towards the end, so I was basically homeless. And all of my friends got stuff. They graduated from college. They went to graduate programs, or they got married. They got a house. Or they moved away. They were able to achieve milestones that I just never had the opportunity to because I was an active addict. They continued to do things that I wanted to do, or at least have the opportunity to do, but my hands were tied. And it continued like that for years and years and years and years and years, until I got my DUI and I went to rehab, but that didn't stick. It was towards the end of my drinking career, and again, I was still in my parents' basement, and I knew how I was going to fix myself. I did what all good alcoholic codependent women do, and I went online dating. I was gonna find a man, because I was back to that shoe situation. I was gonna find something that was just gonna fit that hole, and I was gonna be whole. I really believed that if I could get into a healthy relationship, I didn't even know what a healthy relationship was though, that I would somehow be okay and I could drink and life would be good. So I online dated, and I met my next victim, and he had no idea what was coming for him. At all. I held his life hostage for years, but the red flags, he wasn't emotionally available, and I surely should not have been dating, but I met him, and he was living in Boston when he set up his profile, but in the meantime, he had moved to California and came home so it was just one of those really bad situations, and one night I called him, he says like 60 times, but really. It probably was 60 times. And I was a complete waste product, and he called me the next day and he said, I wish you the best. I wish you the best. I hope you get the help you need. Please never call me again, and if you do, I will call the police. And that's the first time that anybody had ever said that to me. And I thought I was cute, and I was having a good time, and I was just so fun. It was the first time where I had a wake-up call. I had had a DUI by that point, but that didn't wake me up. It was this guy saying to me he was going to call the police. So, and I knew he was serious. Like, that wasn't just a fake, false promise. And so a year went by, and I didn't get better. But a year went by, and in the meantime, he had moved to New Zealand, and he was lonely after a year goes by. And this was the answer to my prayers. It was another shoe situation. It was another guy situation. He asked me how I was. And so, good alcoholic I am. A couple weeks after that, I was on a plane to go see him in New Zealand. Active addict. Actually, the night before I went, I was so drunk, I got shut off at a bar, and they took my keys, and no idea that, might have a problem being in New Zealand with this guy that you really like, might have a problem. So a couple days into this couple-week vacation, I was told that I was no longer welcome in this man's house. And, I was miserable, and I was flying home, and I was crying. I was crying this soul deep, just wailing. I don't know what people on the plane thought of me, but I told them that there was a death in the family. I lied, but to me it felt like a death, right? So I was getting sympathy, and I love that shit. So eat it up, And I wasn't crying though. It was when I got back home, I realized I wasn't crying again. It was like the time after college where all my friends were doing stuff with their lives. It's like another opportunity or another choice had been taken away from me by my own. It was my fault 100%. I'm not blaming it, but it was like I didn't have the opportunity in that situation by my behaviors to end the relationship with him if I wasn't happy. I didn't have the opportunity not to go to New Zealand when I didn't think I should have been going. My eye was just on that prize of getting him. So I got back home and I went into rehab. The thing is, I went into rehab to get the guy back, right? I was going to get him back because I knew enough that I knew I needed to stop drinking, but I thought I just needed to stop drinking enough just to get him back. Because again, time and time again, years of thinking that I could have outside stuff just fix me well enough to be, to drink normally. I should have known, but I didn't. So my eye, again, the same prize in rehab. I remember I went to the Emerson Hospital, and I was sitting in there, like, my thing was like, okay, gotta get out of here, gotta go get an outfit, gotta go be ready for that phone call from him. It was one-track mind. But I am so grateful that God put this man in my life, because without him, he was a carrot that dangled me back into the program. He was the carrot that dangled me back to rehab, because I didn't give two shits about myself. I thought nothing of myself, and I would have killed myself if it wasn't for my parents, that they would have been miserable. It was just this desire to be wanted by him. So I'm grateful that God put this prize into my life. To make me want it badly enough. The thing is that if you stay in program and if you stay in rehab for somebody else, you're not going to keep. My experience is that I didn't keep my sobriety, because I went back out. He was in town and I wanted to show him a good time, so I drank. But God is good enough that in being led to him and in wanting to get him back, I was led into an amazing open AA meeting, where these women showed me love before I could even love myself, and then they eventually showed me how to love myself. And it was a great meeting. It really saved my life. But it was an open AA meeting. And about a year of being sober, I was about to kill myself or kill somebody else. I had a year sobriety, and I thought that after a year sobriety, I was going to start getting shit. Like, where's all this stuff? Like, come on, I was still a sick, suffering person. I was a grown adult, but I was really a little kid inside that just wanted the love from her mother. And I thought I was fearless. I'd still go into the biggest, baddest person in the room and tell them what I thought of, and I thought that meant you were fearless. It just means that you're scared, you want to act out. So a year into program, and really the only two things that have changed looking back is that I didn't bounce checks, and the men that I slept with, I knew their names now. I can remember their names. But everything else was just same old bullshit. One story after another, me lying, me trying to look good, me trying to get you to like me trying not to lose what I thought I had, and I never really had it. It was just that feeling again of not being good enough, and just. So it was a year in, and I remember texting my friend that I met in that early AA meeting. We were both newly sober. And I said, if this is as good as it gets, I don't want this, because this is miserable. I'm miserable. And looking back, what was missing from that meeting, what was missing from my life was God. There was these women with double-digit sobriety who would talk about God on the good days. On the good days, they would take their grandkids to the park, and they would see God in the tulips and in their little puppies, and life was good. But when shit hit the fan, and shit hits the fan, they wouldn't talk about God. They'd be sitting there and miserable and talking, well, God wouldn't lead me to it if God, and that was good and fine, but I'm not going to get double-digit sobriety to sit there scared shitless and have no solution. When the student's ready, teacher appears, and this woman who had been in the meeting for so many times, I knew who she was. All of a sudden, we were at this meeting where I was about to lose it, and I got to the meeting early, this women's meeting, and you just go around and basically it's just a verbal diarrhea of your week, and you just say everything, and I thought that was keeping me sober, and it was, honestly. So we get to this woman, and I had seen her before, and she looked miserable this day. She looked like she was just in so much physical pain. And in my head, in my year of sobriety, like I thought that meant anything, I didn't want this woman to ruin my meeting. She was going to just be miserable about her physical condition. I knew it. I was like, I need some uplifting shit. I need somebody to tell me how good God is. I need somebody to tell me how good life is. I don't want to hear about how miserable she is. I knew I had ESP a year in, and I thought I had ESP, and I could tell you that you're going to ruin my meeting. Who am I to tell somebody else how they should interact in a meeting? Who am I to know what I need in a meeting in a year in sobriety with no recovery work whatsoever? So the meeting finally got to her, and I said, she better be quick, because I've got to share. I've got shit to tell people, I believe that. So it got to her, and she opened up her mouth, And she talked about her physical pain, but that's not what she focused on. She said, I am so grateful that I'm not in too much pain that I could drive here. I'm grateful that there's a meeting here that I can share. I'm grateful that I live close enough to Boston to get world-class medical care. I'm grateful that I have choices in my condition, that I can get care, that there are options. I was never more humbled in my entire life, because I went from thinking that I knew what this woman was going to say and she was going to ruin my meeting, to all of a sudden giving me hope. She talked about this thing. We were in a basement of a church, and for some reason this light was just emanating from her, and she spoke about sunlight of the spirit. I got goosebumps, and I still get goosebumps thinking of it, because I didn't believe in it. I'd read the big book, but it didn't mean anything to me. But for some reason, for this one day, there was hope. Light was shining on her, and she said sunlight of the spirit. She was talking about God. She was talking about a God I didn't believe in an open AA meeting. So that's why I'm so grateful that people who have been through this process go to an open meeting. That's why I go to as many as I can to hear the solution. So I started working with this woman. She became my sponsor. And I'm forever grateful that she came into that meeting that day when she didn't feel like it. I later learned just the extent of the pain that she was in. And most normal people wouldn't have made it to the meeting, but she knew she needed to be there. She knew that she wanted to be there. So for me, I'm beyond grateful that she went to that meeting. The first step for me, and then I did eventually start doing the steps with her. That's right. It was stop and go. And about a year into doing the work, you start seeing patterns in the work, and you start thinking that you're better. I started to feel better. I was like, that's the old me, but I didn't finish the work. So about a year in, I did what I do. And a year into writing, I thought, I've got enough sobriety. I'm going to go online date, right? And so I met this man, so many red flags with him, but he was legally married. He was separated. But I'm going to fix him. I'm going to figure it out, and that's going to make me whole, and I'm going to be good again. Don't finish the step work, Ingrid. No. Go to this unavailable man. God is good. God led me to enough pain that things ended in this fiery crash. Oh, it was terrible. But God's good. God needed me to be in so much pain, like, just finish the work. So I was sitting outside of a meeting in Natick on I think it was a Tuesday evening, and it was a hot day, and it was the summertime, and I met with my sponsor outside, and she had this smile. She was like, I know what you're going to say. It didn't end well, because she didn't sugarcoat stuff, and thank God she didn't, because I needed to hear what I needed to hear. And she said, aren't you tired of this? Aren't you tired of feeling like this? There's a solution. She said, God either is or God isn't, but this is bullshit about half in, half out. You're wasting your time. You're wasting my time. You deserve to have the truth. And she said something to me that night, and she swears she didn't say it to me, but I know she said it. She said, shit or get off the pot. And it's what I needed to hear at that moment. So I ferociously wrote, and I finished the steps, and my life didn't change overnight, but it was the first time that I graduated high school barely, but it's the first time that I actually ever finished something. And my life did get 100% better. It was the best thing that I ever did, was to do the steps. And getting to, I know that 20 minutes has gone by fast, but I'll be really quick. Getting to step one, what my sponsor did was just ask me if I believed that I was powerless over alcohol, and I lied to her, and I said, of course, but in the back of my head at the beginning, and even when I started doing the writing, and even when I was through the writing, I really thought that once I got well enough, I could drink again. I didn't realize how powerless I was. And the truth is, I didn't realize how powerless I was until I did the writing, until I saw the patterns of what happened each and every time, just to the total demoralization of character of what would happen. So I didn't really get step one until I was, mostly through the process. But that's the beauty of the process. I didn't even have to get it fully for it to work, and I didn't even have to do it right. I didn't believe that I was totally powerless over alcohol. And the truth is, there's some stuff that I'm totally powerless over today, and I don't always believe that I'm powerless over. I still think, in some misguided twist of delusion, that I can control some stuff. My mom's an alcoholic. My dad has really bad health. The list goes on, stuff, just life stuff. And I still think, when I'm not on that spiritual beam, that I can control it, that I can tweak it, that I can talk to my dad's doctors and get them to see things. And that's when I lose. That's when I have to step back, and I have to just refocus. But the beauty of the program is that I didn't need to do step one perfectly for it to work. And it did work. It definitely did work. There's two stories that I quickly have that demonstrate step one to me. The first one was when I was living in my parents' basement. I had, and it's what the book talks about, you change your brand of drinking. I thought, if I only drink beer, I'm not going to get that drunk. How'd that work out for me? Not that well. I had all these rules, right? I had these rules that in order to go to work, I had to be showered, I had to have breakfast, I had to have 8 hours of sleep, I had to wear clean clothes. And day by day, or week by week, it would be, okay, so you didn't shower, but you had all this other stuff. Then the next week, you'd lose something else. And then by the end of that time, it was like, if I just show up at work in some condition, I'm good. And it was one morning where I woke up, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I give up. I totally give up. And I got to my knees, and I prayed to a God that I didn't believe in, and I didn't have this big elaborate prayer. I knew no formal prayers, and I said, just please help me. And I got up and I went along my day, but that was the first time that I looked back that I just realized that I couldn't do it anymore. I was powerless. I was totally powerless. And then the other story that I finally was starting to get step one, and it's this big light bulb moment. I was day drinking. I was at the Natick Mall, and I was at some bar, and I went in with the idea that I was going to socially drink. I mean, if you gave me a lie detector test, I would have passed it with flying colors, that I was going to have 2 drinks. I bought magazines to look cool and to go through, and I was going to plan my life, and I had to do that at a bar. But I knew, despite the fact of having years and years of evidence that I can't drink, that I am truly powerless, I thought that this one time I was going to figure it out. And it resonates so well with me because I started drinking in the daytime. And again, at the end of the night, I was closing out the bar once again, talking to the bar backs and the people in the back of the restaurant who were coming up and trying to get them to take me home with them. And for the first time, and I ended up at home. I don't know how I drove, and I don't know how I got home. But I woke up the next day, and I was like, I really can't control drinking. And it was the first time where I really said that. And that was enlightening for me. And I still drank after that, but it was like it got chipped away that maybe I am a little bit powerless. I am a little bit powerless. So those are the times where that really resonates with me. There's so much stuff in the book, but I'll be super, super, super quick. The doctor's opinion for me, when my first sponsor asked me to read the stuff and then report back to her, to give her a call back. And I read this, and I thought it was the most dry, antiquated, terrible thing. I didn't get it, and I didn't want to do this process. So she did what sponsors do, and she had me read with her. And it was after a meeting in Maynard, and we were sitting in a parking lot. It was a wintertime, it was cold, it was snowy, and we were sitting in her beat-up little car with her. The vents of heat were so hot, and I was miserable because it's all about me. And I thought, this woman has children, is having to pay for a babysitter to watch her children, to selflessly sit in the car with me, and I'm complaining, So all of a sudden, she opens up the book, she gets to this, and she's like, oh, it's a doctor's opinion, yes, I'm so excited. And it was her enthusiasm that made me feel enthusiastic about this step. And it was just, it came alive. She read by line, she got more excited and more excited because she said, and I truly looked at it, she said, if this doctor hadn't said what he said, who knows what would have happened? It was in the times of Dr. Drew and there's still a big stigma around addiction, without a doubt, but it was even worse then. And for a doctor to talk about this, it was mind-blowing, and she made the pages come alive. And for that, obviously I'm forever grateful. And it's only now of being through the process and seeing how important what Dr. Silkworth said is. This is a Western doctor, trained Western doctor, saying, We don't have the answers, but we know who does. He talks about synthetic knowledge, and my whole life was filled with synthetic knowledge. I bought so many books to understand addiction. So many books to understand addiction. Like, you can understand addiction just by a book, So for this to be put into words, that you might get a solution by talking to another person who suffers from this, and not from a medical doctor. That you'll get this from somebody who's selflessly giving what they had. Throw in a buck or not, like whatever. But it's not, I went to so many shrinks that I paid my big copay, and I was going to sit there, and you were going to shrink my head, and we were going to get all figured out. And then I'd go home and I'd drink. But the only hope that I had was when I was sitting in meetings like this, in church basements, in cars that were venting hot air, that I finally had a solution, and the doctor knew it. The doctor knew it, and without this, I don't know where I'd be. So I've talked too long, but thank you so much for allowing me to speak, and I look forward to hearing your story.